Hello, welcome to Red Book Joy. Today I'm doing the Phenomenal Woman tag. If you're new to the channel, I'm Jack. If you're not new, welcome back. And today I am doing the Phenomenal Woman book tag, which was an original tag created by my lovely friend Marilyn. Marilyn's channel, which I'll link in the description box below, Marilyn Maya Mendoza, has been going for 4 years on Booktube. Congratulations, Marilyn. It is her Booktube birthday and she is celebrating by doing a month-long reading event, the Phenomenal Woman reading event, where she is encouraging us to read the work of Maya Angelou, who Marilyn has a deep affinity with and who's a lot of respect for, and whose work has profoundly affected her life and brought her a lot of joy and meaning. So we are celebrating Marilyn, and we are celebrating Maya Angelou, and we are celebrating phenomenal women in general with this tag. So Marilyn has been such a delightful booktuber. She's been one of the people I've connected with on here who has really enriched my reading experiences. We've read a number of books together and she's always so knowledgeable and she's so thoughtful about reading, about life, about books and authors, and she's someone who I really admire. She started her channel on her 70th birthday. She's made friends, she's built a community, and I'm glad to be part of that because we have become friends. We talk very regularly and we have read together, and Marilyn is a lovely person and someone who I definitely count as a friend, and I'm pleased to count as a friend and proud to say she's my friend. So Marilyn, congratulations on your 4th year on Booktube. This is coming up to my 4th year as well. Our Booktube birthdays are quite close together, but we didn't discover each other till about 6 months into Marilyn and mine's Booktube journeys. Marilyn was featured by Claudia over at Spencer Library on an interview. Claudia had discovered her channel and loved her, and she interviewed her, and I watched it, and I went over and watched her videos, and immediately we connected. So I'm really pleased that I got to know Marilyn. Maya Angelou is an author who I read I Know Where the Caged Bird Sings when I was younger, and I am ashamed to say I have very vague memories of it. I read it when I was a teenager, so it is like 30 odd years ago that I read it. So I think her work is something I obviously need to revisit. So what I do want to do is share a poem by Maya Angelou. A lot of people are sharing poems and things by Maya Angelou. If you want to go and check out some wonderful ones, the lovely Pat over at Book Chat with Pat has been publishing some Maya Angelou poetry she's been reading, so I'm going to link that in the description box below. Pat is a wonderful retired English teacher, high school English, and she has, I believe, and she has a great knowledge of Maya Angelou and her work, and a great respect for it, and has taught many things to do with Maya Angelou in her classes. So I'm going to link Pat's channel in the description box below as well, so go and check out Pat's channel. But me personally, I am someone who I love teaching poetry because as a teacher, and English being my specialism, I teach poetry a lot, but I'm not someone who tends to go out and seek a lot of poetry to read recreationally. However, there is a Maya Angelou poem that I have taught with a number of times and I love, and I'm going to link a video down below where you can watch the poem being read by someone much better than me, but I will talk about it at the end of this as well. So on to the tag, and the first question, there are only 3 questions. The first question is, who is your favourite phenomenal woman author? That was an easy one for me because my favourite female author, hands down, is Jane Austen. If you've not been on my channel before, then you might not know that. If you've been here before, you'll definitely know. Austen, I love Jane Austen. I fell in love with Austen's work, not straight away. First time I read Austen, I was 17, I was doing my A-levels and I read Emma and I hated it, absolutely hated it. And I think it was picking it apart, not reading it as a novel and enjoying it as a novel, but just picking this text apart, which was a lot of what we did for A-level English literature. And I just found it, because I didn't understand the cleverness of the writing, I didn't understand how observant her character work was, how clever the dialogue was. I didn't get any of that because I was just bored of a book which seemed to be, to me, who wasn't interested in such things, about marriage and matchmaking, and I just couldn't see beyond that, and the fact that I had to study it and write essays on it, and I hated it. Skip forward a few years, maybe not that many years actually, skip forward a year or so, and the BBC did their production of Pride and Prejudice with Colin Firth and Jennifer Ely, and I absolutely loved it. And to the point where I was like, I'm going to go out and get the book, read the book, then I've read the book repeatedly over my lifetime and just absolutely adored every word. Come to it afresh every time and find new things that I never noticed before. It makes me laugh. I just think it's so witty, so cleverly plotted. It's the, friends to lovers, enemies to lovers trope done brilliantly in the best possible way. And I just find that I've then grown an appreciation of Austen more and more and more as my life has gone on. So for every year, every decade of my life, I discover more things that I love about Austen's work. I have now read I've read all of her 6 novels. Mansfield Park was the last one I needed to read. I read that a couple of years ago. Didn't love it. So I don't love everything about Austen's work. I do think on a reread it may improve for me, Mansfield Park. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. But I love everything else she's written. I've read all of her unfinished works. I've read some of her juvenilia, and I've read a lot of books about Austen thanks to the lovely Jane Austen July readathon that's hosted here on Booktube, which if you've not heard of, I'll link in the description box below this year's host announcement videos. But it's one of the biggest readathons or loveliest readathons for me on Booktube. It's my favourite one actually. That and Victober. So so I love Austen. And if you think about Austen and when she was writing and how popular her books became, and that she would write at her desk when no one else was in the sitting room, write by hand, and have to put her work away to entertain people when they came in or to take care of the business of the house. She never married, and she had, a very short life. She was, was she 41 or 42 when she died? And she managed to accomplish so much and actually change the way we think of novels and characters and the structure of books. And I'm not clever enough to talk about how she's done that, but I have read some things about it. John Mullen's book, What Matters in Austen, and I'm sure it was in that he talks about how her work and the way she's written it, the structure of it and the way she presented it was very different from anything that had been done up until that point. So yeah, she's, a trailblazer, a hugely influential author in and just really observant, really witty and highly entertaining to this day. I think she's hilarious. So yeah, Austen is my favourite phenomenal woman author. The next question was a little bit tricky for me to answer because it is, what book features your favourite phenomenal woman character? Now, the tricky thing is, I was thinking about my favourite phenomenal woman characters and several of them are written by men. So I wasn't sure if I had to pick a phenomenal woman character written by a woman. I didn't want to say any Austen characters again because I put Austen as my favourite author, though I could definitely have Lizzie Bennet in there. I love Elizabeth Bennet, and Anne Elliot from Persuasion could be in there. So I love both of those characters. But I didn't want to put any Austen, but I'm just going to give them honourable mentions. So I was thinking about my favourite women characters. I've got favourite female characters who are not women, like Anne from Anne of Green Gables, Anne Shirley. But then I thought about Marilla Cuthbert in Anne of Green Gables, and I have to get my copy out while I talk about her. I reread Anne of Green Gables a couple of years ago, and I've read it multiple times in my life. And I love this book. It's one of my favourite books of all time. And I reread it a couple of years ago. My lovely friend Emily was doing a read along of all the Anne books, all the Anne of Green Gables, Ellen Montgomery's Anne series, and we read this, and it made me cry, and it made me laugh. And I had read it recently from that, but when I was doing that reread, it just struck me that when I was a child and I read this book and I loved it then, I was concentrating on Anne's story. And Matthew and Marilla were kind of background characters. And Marilla Cuthbert in this book stuck out her story and her affection and her love as she becomes a mother to Anne and as she becomes a parent, and the love that she has for her just got me just got me right in the feels. I absolutely love Marilla Cuthbert in this book. She's a strong and kind but not overly sugary character, and I just find her, she's a brilliant character. So I thought about Marilla Cuthbert, and then the other characters I thought about that I love, I'm going to mention the one that I love, because I'm mentioning this because, of course, this is a woman who's created this character. But two of my favourite female characters of all time are created by men. And I'm going to talk about them because I love the characters. But I'm going to talk about the female characters created by women that I love as well. So Marilla Cuthbert was one. Not Anne, because I think in this, Anne is a child. We're talking about phenomenal women. And I think Marilla is a phenomenal woman character. So aside from Marilla, the other character I want to talk about who's created by a woman and is a female character who I love, and I've read all the books from this series, and that is Charlaine Harris's Sookie Stackhouse, who, this is the first book in the Southern Vampire Mystery series, Dead to the World, and most people know them as the True Blood books. So True Blood was a TV show back in the sort of mid to late 2000s, but the books are great. I love these books. Back then, I was in my sort of mid to late 20s, I think, and I was reading these and I was devouring them. When I discovered them, I devoured them, and they were recommended to me by the Amazon algorithm, funnily enough, because Amazon was a new thing then. I was buying books from Amazon for the first time, and this was recommended to me. I'd never heard of it before, and then I was just hooked. These are, if you've never read these books, Charlaine Harris is a great mystery writer. They're mystery books at heart, but they have an urban fantasy kind of setting where, in an alternate version of America, vampires are real and they are out of the coffin. So there's a lot of social commentary about prejudice and integration of these vampires, and behind the scenes they're trying to have this kind of public image of just like undead. As my other favourite character I'm going to talk about in a minute, Buffy, would say, you're undead Americans, basically. So they're trying to have this kind of public image of just, we've got a disease, we have to drink blood, but there's a synthetic blood that's been created that's allowed them to come out publicly, and they don't have to kill people, but behind the scenes they are. And then there's other supernatural phenomena that's then, not really spoken about. But Sookie is a waitress in Bonton in Louisiana, which is a tiny town, and she is psychic. She can read minds. So we have Sookie, and she can read minds, and she's never been able to have a normal life because she can't shut out people's thoughts, or she couldn't when she was a child. She can't go on dates because, can you imagine going on a date and you can read your your date's mind and everything? So she can't have a normal life. So she works as a waitress, and then she meets her first vampire, and the vampire Bill, which is great, Vampire Bill, which they call him in the books. He comes in and she can't read his mind, and so that's the first scene in the first book. It's like the vampire comes into the bar she works in, and for the first time she's with someone and she can't hear a thing, she can't hear his thoughts, and it's just a relief to her. So they start a relationship, and throughout I think there's 10 books, maybe 12 books, or is there 13 books, something like that. Throughout all of these books, Sookie is just a great character. The character development of her over the series is wonderful. The books are funny, they're light reading, but they're I think they are a lot cleverer than people might give them credit for. And I think Sookie as a character, she starts off as this kind of very innocent, very sheltered, she's like the town oddball because people think she's crazy because they don't know she can read minds. They think she just hears voices. So she starts off as this character, and then throughout the series she just becomes this really strong, very independent, very brave character, and she's just wonderful. She tells the story, so we're listening to her voice the whole time, and I just think she's a wonderful character. So I love these books. So if you like urban fantasy and you've never read these are kind of the pinnacle of urban fantasy, paranormal romance, I suppose, as well, you call them, but also very good mystery stories. So yeah, Sookie Stackhouse can go up there with Marilla Cuthbert. What a strange dinner party that would be. Honourable mentions have to be given to Granny Weatherwax from the Discworld books. So this is Granny, and these are just some of the books she's in. These are the books that she features in with Nanny Ogg, who is the other witch. So they're the Lancre Coven on the Discworld. So the Discworld fantasy series by Terry Pratchett, and Granny Weatherwax is just absolutely my favourite female character from these books. She's also one of my, she's she was my favourite character for years, but she kind of vies for top place now with Sam Vimes, who is the captain of the City Watch. But Granny was my first and favourite character in the Discworld. Granny is just a brilliant mentor. She's clever, she's fierce, and she's just really engaging as a character, and I absolutely love her. So this is the first book, Equal Rights, and Granny is the first time we meet Granny. This is the third Discworld novel, and Granny is a local witch in a very small mountain village, and a wizard comes to the village and he wants to pass his staff onto the eighth son of an eighth son, which is supposed to be a wizard, and he passes the staff to a newly born eighth son of an eighth son, and after he dies they discover the baby's actually a girl and the girl is Escarina Smith, and Granny is the local witch, and the kind of magic between witches and wizards is very different. Witches are much more like traditional earth kind of magic, very much more about hearth magic, about like the homes, and in fact a lot of what Nanny does isn't magic. She's what she calls headology, which is her version of psychology, where she kind of just tells the local people, she gives them some actual medicine but then tells them to do some sort of silly ritual or thing, just because they think because she's a witch it has to be magic and there has to be some magic words. So she does all this what she calls headology, and a lot of her magic is just her being really, really clever. And then she has to train Escarina, because Escarina has this staff, and the staff is magic, and she is got these powers like a wizard. So but the wizard's kind of magic is very much more male, and there's a wizard university, it's very academic, and so Granny is trying to train this young girl. So the book is very good. It's called Equal Rights, as you can see, very clever, and yeah, it's a great book. If you've never read any Pratchett and you like the sound of that, it's not a bad place to start actually. And if you were creating a book prize, which book by a phenomenal woman author would you choose? So I was trying to think of phenomenal women authors and then think of their books. I want to mention some phenomenal women authors that I did think about for the first question and for this question. First of all, I want to mention the amazing Mary Beard. I've got a couple of books here by her because I went to see Mary Beard talking about this new book of hers, Emperor of Rome. Mary Beard is just brilliant. I love Mary Beard, the historian. She's brought classics into the public consciousness. She's just made it really accessible for people, and I love that because my undergraduate degree was in Roman history, and Roman and Greek classical archaeology basically was my degree, and I love Mary Beard. Mary Beard makes things so accessible. If you want to know more about the history of Rome and you want to read about it in a really accessible, easy reading way, or you want to watch something entertaining, you go and watch Mary Beard. You can find videos of her debating or talking. There's a really good debate between her and Boris Johnson about Greeks versus Romans. So that's a really good debate to go and watch on YouTube actually. But Mary Beard, yeah, I want to give an honourable mention to Mary Beard because I think she's done an awful lot for making classics accessible for everybody. I also want to mention the amazing Barbara Pym. This is a book I haven't read yet. It's on my TBR, Excellent Women, but I've read a couple of Barbara Pym books in the last few years, and I want to read everything by Barbara Pym. Absolutely loved these books. And in a similar vein to Jane Austen, she is hilariously observant of people and the way they behave, and her characters are just brilliant. So yeah, honourable mention to Barbara Pym. The book I'm going to mention, and the author I'm going to mention for the book that I would give a prize to, is by the amazing Malorie Blackman. It's neither of these books that I would give a prize to, though they are very, very good. Cloudbusting particularly, I love. Malorie Blackman is a Black British author. She has written an amazing array of books for children, and she is so well loved, and she was our children's laureate for a while, and she is just an absolute legend in children's publishing here in the UK. And she wrote a book which I'm currently reading and rereading, I should say, for the first time in years, and I'd forgotten how phenomenal it was, and I'm discussing it with one of my students at the moment who is just fallen in love with it, and it's Noughts and Crosses, which is the first in a series that she wrote. And Malorie Blackman wrote this book, Noughts and Crosses, because she wrote it in the mid-90s, and she was so angry and upset and just fed up with the level of racism she experienced in her lifetime. And the teenager Stephen Lawrence was a black teenager who was murdered for sitting at a bus stop when some racist white men passed by, and she was so, I mean, it makes me want to cry thinking about it. And she was so outraged by this, so upset by it, and she just wanted to write something to educate and to tell people about what prejudice is like and how it feels to live within a system that is racist and that is prejudiced and that you are disadvantaged in. And so she wrote Noughts and Crosses, and Noughts and Crosses is a phenomenal piece of young person's literature, and it is set in a world where it's an alternate version of our world, and it's set in the land of Albion, which is England. And in this version of our world, Europeans didn't invade Africa and enslave people. It was the other way around. Africa invaded Europe and colonised it and enslaved the people. And the two main characters, Callum and Sephi, are noughts and crosses. So the ruling crosses they're the sort of ruling class and the ruling race. And the noughts, so Sephi is a cross, Callum is a nought. So it's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet story. And they are best friends, and everything's against them. And the noughts at this time, they're not enslaved, it's post-slavery, but it is a time of civil unrest and segregation. So within it, she so cleverly brings to life the mistreatment of the noughts. And when children read it, if they know nothing about the book, if they read it for the first time, they immediately assume that Callum is black because he is being abused and discriminated against, and there are derogatory remarks, and then as the book goes on and we discover what they actually look like, they're shocked. And it's a book that stops them and forces them to think about racism and bias and all sorts of really deep things. So that's the book I would give the Phenomenal Woman Author Award to, if there were such a thing. Noughts and Crosses by Mallory Blackman. It's an amazing book, and if you've never read it, I'd urge you to read it. It's the first in a 6-book series, and there was a BBC, which is on iPlayer if you're here in the UK, you can still watch it. There was a BBC dramatisation of Noughts and Crosses a few years ago, and I'd highly recommend it. So the poem I'm going to read from Maya Angelou is Life Doesn't Frighten Me, and it's a poem that I've read with children many, many times, and the reason I love reading it is because there's an amazing narrative voice of a young child, but it's also really good for teaching that idea of narrative voice and who's speaking and how do we know and what do we know about them, and then talking about fears and talking about real fears and imaginary fears and the difference between them. So I just think it's a great poem. There is a video of her reading it, or at least a recording of her reading it, which if I can find it I will link it in the description box. But there is also an amazing illustrated version, and I forget the illustrator is an artist, a famous artist, illustrated this poem, and so you can get this as an illustrated picture book. So here is the poem, and it is called Life Doesn't Frighten Me. Shadows on the wall, noises down the hall. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Bad dogs barking loud, big ghosts in a cloud. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Mean old Mother Goose, lions on the loose, they don't frighten me at all. Dragons breathing flame on my counterpane, that doesn't frighten me at all. I go boo, make them shoo, I make fun, way they run. I won't cry, so they fly, I just smile, they go wild. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Panthers in the park, strangers in the dark, no, they don't frighten me at all. That new classroom where boys all pull my hair, kissy little girls with their hair in curls, they don't frighten me at all. Don't show me frogs and snakes and listen for my scream. If I'm afraid at all, it's only in my dreams. I've got a magic charm that I keep up my sleeve. I can walk the ocean floor and never have to breathe. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Not at all. Not at all. Life doesn't frighten me at all. And that is a wonderful poem. And I love talking with children about whether this person is frightened and they're trying to just make themselves less frightened, like they're talking out their fears, and whether they're young or old, and how we know whether there are real fears here, whether they're a boy, whether they're a girl, and what we can learn. It's a very good poem for inference. It's also a great poem for rhyme, because there are a lot of different rhyming structures within the poem, so it's a really great poem for teaching, and I love it. And yeah, I'll link in the description box Maya Angelou reading the poem. That was the Phenomenal Woman tag, and I'm really pleased to have done it. Really happy Booktube birthday to Marilyn. I really want to wish you a happy Booktube birthday. It's my Booktube birthday next month, and I have to think about what I'm going to do for that. But I'm going to tag some phenomenal women. I'm going to tag Gemma at Gemma Books, Charlie at Charlie Book Reads, Emily at Novell Novels, Ange at Ange's Book Chatter, and I am going to tag Dani at Dani's Book World, though Dani is a little bit busy at the moment, but we'll see if she can get around to it, and hopefully you'll do that tag. If you've never been here before and you like this kind of rambling nonsense, maybe you'll think about subscribing and sticking around for my next video. If you like the sound of any of those books that I mentioned, I do have a 5% discount code for Books Please, which is an online book retailer, and that's in the description box below for you. Go get 5% off your books, and if you do, I get a little bit back that I put towards the channel at no extra cost to you. So yeah, so that's there if you want that, and hopefully I will see you again soon. Bye!